The whole Liam Kumar Day effect, not really happening.
Nigel couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I rang up Mendenhall, he said he could make it.
Don't think this whole Phil, credit to the guy, he always manages to do well what he has to. He is a shocking person right now. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pre-event.
No, my life from Rashad Mendenhall.
Right, here we go. Cancel. I'm a tag, Jack. I'm a fucking tag.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the LOC Report. We're back again after another mini bye week because, you know, we need as many as we can get, don't we, Chris?
Absolutely. I say I'm surprised, but yes, we're back here, feeling very refreshed. I think, somewhat refreshed, and yes, ready to go again for a review of yet another week.
Yes, yet another week, and we're entering the very busy part of the season now because it's, as the episode title suggests, we're entering Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving on Thursday, so lots of football for us, and that obviously marks a very important time in the LOC calendar as well because, it's very near the end of the regular season at that point, so lots of things usually start to crystallise. But we'll see what's going on with the league today. We'll take a look back to week 11. Obviously, we won't go all the way back to week 10, but we'll cover the standing stats and stuff, which indirectly covers all that stuff. We'll take a look forward to week 12. Only 3 weeks left to go in the regular season, Chris. But still lots to play for.
Yeah. Where's that gone?
Tell me about it. It's like I was like, I'm still pretty hopeful of my team. 3-8 and I'm done. Oh, cool. Okay, spoilers.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Where's the year? Well, where's the second half of the year gone? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, no, you're right. It has absolutely flown by. But we will get straight to it with the recaps, and for that we of course need the recap jingle to usher us in. So here we go. Cool, and obviously we didn't have a pod last week, so no official marquee matchup. But if we had done it, I imagine we would have chosen Forge Flies against Tom's Tyrants, being two of the highest scoring teams so far in the league. Both of them are absolutely in the hunt for a playoff spot. Chris, obviously you've not necessarily got or had the points forward wildcard locked up, despite the record, but in very good stead for it. And equally, Tom's Tyrants in very good position for all of that as well. As it pertains to the game, you had an absolutely fun affair on Sunday, going to the tune of 132 to 84. So you get the old buzzsaw, which you can't hear, but the listeners can. Right through Tom's Tyrants' playoff chances. No, he's still alive. So that brings you up to 5-6, and drops Tom's Tyrants to 6-5. Depending on what happens elsewhere, could make the Southampton division very interesting. The history of this matchup all time now as well. I think that does something interesting there. Yet you're 10-10 all time against Tom now, so it levels the series up there as well. Yeah. Taking a look at the teams. Great day obviously all around for you. John Love notching 22, Jamar Chase getting 20, Zay Flowers chipping in with 10, Kamara getting 9, Kenneth Walker 12, Jameer Gibbs 18, Chris Boswell 24. We were loving that. I forgot about that. Yep. The Lions D getting 17. So as you say, Chris, you had basically if Kamara got one more point, you effectively had the perfect day.
Oh, I know. If only. Yeah, Kamara and Flowers, I know they'd just ticked over that extra point. Yeah, it's the very rare perfect game. There's no denying that that was a very solid performance all round. And as we keep saying, when you have 2 QB scores, then you should be winning. But arguably, I had 5. So in that case, there's no reason not to. You'd be feeling very, very bitter if you hadn't won on a 132-point week. You see touchdowns across the board, even those that didn't score, which only really was Kamara. Still pretty good yardage totals. I appreciate wholeheartedly that kicker and defense score is a little bit inflated, especially Boswell's 24, which is quite unbelievable.
Tom got 9 and 11 on the other side from kicker and special teams, which, granted, not as dramatic as yours, but a pretty good special teams and defense week by its own regard as well. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, generally speaking, this team has been scoring well. As we'll see later on in the show, throughout the season, but just keeps getting scored on, and on this occasion, it managed to outscore and did not get scored on. So that's good. But for Tom again, aside from the spectacularly good score for Alan Ross and Brown against the Jags, it was a little bit of a disappointment, I think, across the board. So we've seen Daniels go for a much higher score for most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, the Ramsey and Younghoe Koo's kicker did prop that up a little bit, but yeah, touchdowns were clearly the problem for the skill positions. Then there was some decent yardages, just not enough 6 points to get them up to 100, which again is what we all kind of attain for in this game. So yeah, it's Tom will have better weeks, but I think at the moment, with especially if you look on the bench as well,
that's what I was going to come to. Yeah,
you need Jones and Williams and Amon-Ra to really anchor that team in the skill positions.
Yep.
Jaden Daniels to have a good day, but outside of that, there's two positions where Kelsey and Shakir live at the moment, who I don't think, and obviously with Rashad White to come back in, but you have to see where the land lies with T. Higgins, who has consistently scored well since he's come back from injury.
I very much question the decision to start him over Shakira and Kelsey, because
agreed.
While Kelsey, this is a disappointing Kelsey game, I think it's fair to say, for Tom, because he has been better obviously since Rice went down, because they've needed to lean on him more again. This is more like what he did at the start of the season, but nobody was really expecting that. However, like for like, Higgins' upside on a given week is definitely better than Kelsey's, and Higgins obviously wouldn't have drawn the top corner, Santos Samuel Jr. for the Chargers, so he figured to benefit from that as well. And then Shakira, again, it's a similar case. Like, he's a reasonable player, especially where Cooper's a bit banged up and stuff as well. But again, Higgins definitely has that upside edge over him. So it doesn't change the result here. But the more interesting thing, I think there might be a little quarterback controversy potentially, or a quarterback conundrum problem for Tom Sirens, because Jaden Daniels has not been the same since the rib injury, whether that's just the rookie wall, whether that's is the injury still affecting him. The team has come out and insisted that isn't the case, but you never know. Who knows what it is? But Bo Nix, fellow rookie quarterback, has quietly, really outplayed Jaden Daniels, I think, not just in fantasy terms, but potentially even real life terms over the last month or so. Even I think I'm not sure what the odds are at the moment for the rookie of the year, but I think those two are the definite favourites for it. I mean, at one point it seemed like Jaden Daniels had that locked up, but now it's actually seemed like, okay, if Bo Nix can keep this up and Jaden Daniels continues the way he's going, it's hard to see Bo Nix not winning that. He's got a game against the Raiders this week. I would be shocked if Tom doesn't play Bo Nix over Jaden Daniels this week. And again, I think if he did those two things, again, I don't think it changed the result, which is a testament to how well your team did, by the way. But it's about a 40-point swing, near enough. And obviously points are precious, as we know, especially with how tight the LOC is this year. So yeah, these are the kind of things that I've had that in the last few years. It's one decision that makes the entire league literally slip through your fingers for a season, and it's horrendous when it comes down to stuff like that. But that's the game, unfortunately. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You need to get those things right. So yeah, we'll see where Tom goes from there. That was a Founder Bowl as well, by the way. So we'll go on to the next games that we would have had last week. Now, next game also probably would have been a contender for marquee matchup. Dream Team against Pakistan. Dream Team were fairly comfortably leading this division at 7-3. Pakistan were chasing a bit at 5-5, but Pakistan gets a crucial win, 95 to 68, to make this division more interesting going into the final 3 weeks. Brings him to one win within the Dream Team, 6-5 against 7-4, albeit I think Viv probably has the points edge. But Pat picks up a crucial win to make the division more interesting. Tua going for 30 points. He's back off the IR spot as well. Pat avoided punishment for that, luckily for him. CeeDee Lamb got 11. James Cook 15. Devon Achane 17. So those guys really powered him there. For Viv, Lamar Jackson. We know this team is very Lamar Jackson heavy. It's a good team beyond Lamar Jackson, but he goes as Lamar Jackson goes. He only got 17 points in this one, but there were more problems beyond that. Brian Robinson, the only skill position player to go over 10 points with 13. Kimmy Fairbairn got 10 points as well. So yeah, bad day for Viv, or just generally across the board. But yeah, a crucial win for Pat, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is when some of Pat's weapons are getting back to what we saw earlier on in the season. It does help to have a QB that fires and has the potential to do so every week. But obviously, he did ride that out with Sam Darnold when midpoint of the season when he was doing very well. Still is, I would say.
Yeah, I think he's QB 10. I think over at the moment. Yeah. But
I think with someone like Tua, who if we look at some of the stats, has got a few plum games coming up recently, and we've seen that game against the Raiders, obviously just near enough 30 points. He goes to New England, Green Bay, and the Jets in the next few games. So I think that's exactly what you want to see at this point of the season.
Miami just look better now as well. Like for so much of the season, and I get to missed a lot of it, but it was. You see all these coaches, like you see Kevin O'Connell maximise with Sam Darnold. We've seen Kyle Shanahan build a system around Brock Purdy. So many coaches absolutely mitigate for not great quarterback situations. And Mike McDaniel, this supposed great offensive mind, at the start of the year it wasn't great even before Tua got injured, and then it was just abhorrent when he did.
Quite.
This was going to be the interesting thing for when Tua returned, is does this Miami offense actually get back on track or not? Because it's not like they'd shown anything really beforehand. I don't think they're still quite at the heights, definitely not that they have been in the last few years, but to your point, they're absolutely playing better than they were, and that's obviously enough to make Tua quite fantasy relevant again, and the rest of the offense.
Absolutely, no doubt. But you look down there again, and as a result of that, I guess Achane becomes a bit more of a factor as we see there. But decent scores from Cook, who it was very touchdown dependent, mind you. And CeeDee Lamb, who will just get fed now, I think, through the course of the rest of the season. But Brian Thomas has been a good pickup, and Jalen Warren came in for James Conner. Say useful, but nothing spectacular, and say in a bit of a weird game where obviously there was a lot of field goals for Pittsburgh. For Pat on the bench, going forward, say we see Donald there, who's going to obviously provide that backup, but Connor, Waddle, Anderson are perfectly adequate. I think that's a good thing. So still hanging around in the hunt is Pat. Having said that, though, someone who probably shouldn't be hanging around in the hunt, as you mentioned, the one-man team that is Lamar Jackson and whatever skill positions that Viv can roll out in any given week. If Lamar's output isn't there, it seems to me as though it's quite an anemic thing. Because you look at those receivers who, on paper, Brown, Garrett Wilson, and DeAndre Hopkins, all of them should be producing more than the yardage that they are in matchups such as those, but simply didn't.
Well, I think, to your point, Brown is really the only one that you would look to there, and each week you'd say would be a nailed-on good player. Like you say, his output wasn't necessarily where you'd hope here, but within the Seagulls offense, he's been pretty good. But Wilson and Hopkins, they're not really guys week in, week out, certainly, that you can rely on.
Certainly not. No, I give you that. But the fact is that they should be. They've got absolutely the talent to be able to do that. Maybe Hopkins is slowing down in slightly these days, but the fact that the Jets are in such a dysfunctional mess doesn't help. But Harrison Robinson have been relatively consistent in terms of output through most of the year. Again, good yardage totals, and Robinson gets the touchdown. But therein lies the weak point of this team. If Lamar does not produce for 30 points, it does not look as good, and they've got a problem with receivers. So, and unfortunately, you look to the bench, and there's no way out of that. No. So yes, it's ride or die on those receivers for Viv.
Yeah, definitely. Next game then, we'll stay in the Portsmouth division, with Ixan against Bucking the Trend. Bucking the Trend have been pretty hot, white hot in fact, lately. Meanwhile, Ixan, as we know, have had a bit of an inconsistent year, but found themselves 4-6 against Bucking the Trend 6-4, and again we see a bit of a squeeze in the Portsmouth division because Ixan wins this one, 109-86, bringing them up to 5-6, and but dropping Bucking the Trend to 6-5. The history of this matchup all time now, Bucking the Trend is 3-7 all time against Ixan, and I don't know if I did Viv against Pat, but I'll just make sure I do that quickly. Viv is now 10-4 all time against Pat, by the way, so it's a bit of a one-sided affair. But yeah, back to this one, Ixan against Bucking the Trend. Russell Wilson gets a start, doesn't perform in this one in what was seemingly a plum matchup against Baltimore. He only got 6 points, but didn't matter for them because Puka made his resurgent return, punctuated with 18 points. Saquon Barkley obviously erupted for 32. Jerry Jeudy as well, again a guy that Ben has shown a lot of loyalty to. Loyalty paid off here with 20. Lutz and the Niners D getting 9-11 apiece as well. For Mike, still a reasonable day at the office. It's bad compared to what he has been doing lately, but 86 points when you pan across the league would have got him a win in a fair amount of games, not more than 50%, but a fair amount. Mahomes getting the start of Geno Smith, good decision, 22 points. Perkins got 9, Josh Jacobs got 19, and Chase Brown got 14. But yeah, just not enough behind that really to compete with Ixan in this one, Ben.
No, exactly.
Yep.
No, exactly, and I think again Ben's team's the way it's composed is just strange because week in week Barkley does wonders for it and anchors it well.
Well, if we've seen Lamar Jackson or bust, maybe not quite that for Viv, but Ben's team is absolutely Barkley or bust.
It's Barkley all round, So again, without that total, it's a different game. But yeah, you're right. Jerry Jeudy going for 142 yards and a touchdown, of which 80 yards and a touchdown of that was one play. Fair enough. At least he's kind of played the metric on that one, perhaps. But and we know how good Puka is, and obviously been missed quite a lot of the season anyway. But yeah, this team is screaming out for consistency. Can it find it? Because in fairness to Baker, who comes back in.
I was going to say, yeah, he didn't have Baker this week, who is, I think, at least still QB2 or 3, despite the bye week. So
the 3 games remaining against the Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders should be absolutely plum for
and
Ben.
He's getting Mike Evans back now as well, which is going to be. I mean, he's been still decent without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So Ben's got these strange weapons. I think you can look at people like Alec Pierce on the bench, for example, who seems to just pop off for a 40-yard reception every week.
Quentin Johnson too. He's a guy that
absolutely. So yes, I think even with Ben now at 5-6, there's elements of this team now which look quite strong. And I think going into the last 3 could be a bit of a late contender, perhaps for a run, because you look down there, and if you consider that, I know we're talking about last week, but when you consider that could be Metcalf, Puka, and either one of probably. Just say Johnston or Ridley, whichever one of the two, doesn't really matter between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Judy seems to be the number 1 receiver now in Cleveland, which again, playing with Jameis, you never really know what the output might be. Could be great, could not be, but it's worth the gamble, especially as your 3rd or 4th choice receiver. So, and with Barkley producing as he is, I think you're in a good place there. Somehow he's managed to keep himself in the game up to this point with that team, and bearing in mind that he was on his arse for a lot of the season, so fair enough. For Mike, it's spiked with 3 players. Mahomes absolutely was the right call, and should be going into the last few games. I think they have still much to play for, but yeah, good outputs from Jacobs and Chase Brown. Bijan really hasn't been dominant as perhaps anybody thought he might be from a fantasy perspective this year. But again, useful to have. And then the two that he's picked up, say, well, Pickens is on the trade with you, which again, 8-9 yards receiving but no touches, good yardage total, I would say, for the week. And Cooper will have better weeks once he recovers fully from his injury. The bench is pretty anemic, but the fact that JSN seems to be in the ascendancy in Seattle is only a good thing, and can be bought in and out as is. But yeah, 86 isn't a terrible week, but yeah, just Ben sneaks it on marginal gains, mainly with Saquon Barkley's output.
Yeah, absolutely. Next game then, we head to the Winchester division with Fruity Kittles entering this one at 5-5 against Great Scott. Also 5-5, so this was a little bit of jostling for position in the division as well. Great Scott, absolutely slams Fruity Kittles all over the place. Just rips that bag open and tosses it on the floor. 142 to 83. You get the buzz for Jeff, absolutely. 43 points from Jared Goff, who he pipped me to the waiver wire for. Damn you. Cooper Kupp, he got 23. Jawan Jennings, nice little ad that, by the way. We'll come back to that in a second, I'm sure. 15 points. Jameson Williams, that is 19 points. Brees 24 points. Just a terrific day, 142. That might be the high of the year so far. I will check that while you're doing your analysis. Meanwhile, on the other side of the board for Ross, again, 83 points. On the face of it, not a terrible day, not a great day, but Joe Burrow contributing 35 of that, and the kicker and defense doing 11-10 apiece. So considering those two things, not a great result. A little bit of saving face going on there. Great Scott picks it up, goes to 6-5, drops Fruity Kittles to 5-6 in the history of this matchup all time. Great Scott are now 2-1 against Ross's team. So we spoke, I think, the last time around about Great Scott that obviously at this point last year it was kind of the point he started catching fire and went on that run to the Corona Bowl. This year it seemed to be going the other way. It seemed to be faltering, and then all of a sudden 142 points out of nowhere, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this has got to. You look over the last few weeks and you don't really see where this is coming from, because he's been pretty consistent. So I'm going from week 8, 81, and week 9 was 73, and then week 10 gets slightly better at 82, and then you go to week 11, it erupts for 141. Now you think to yourself, well, that's got an element of some luck in it, but I think when you have certain players like Goff, for example, 42 points is an absurd total for any player, not necessarily for a QB. We don't see that many 40-plus points score in for a QB. No. So dominant performance there, and that only affects Jameson Williams' output because was an absolute plum matchup against the Jags, who are in a complete state of disarray. So I'm sure Jeff took great delight in his fantasy team winning, even if his supported team absolutely got shat on.
You know how it goes, and it's the same with the Patriots. Like the season's dead and buried for Jags, so he may as well get some benefit out of it.
Absolutely, every benefit going. And then skill positions again, very very good yardage and TD scores. I think Brees Hall's going to be a major part of that Jets offense now, especially as maybe we'll come to in the news section in a bit, with Aaron Rodgers not being overly well or motivated perhaps to continue the season. Then there's going to be a lot of going through him. I think Cooper Kupp had an excellent day, but again on limited reception. I think when you go for, what was it? I think it was a 70-yard TD, wasn't it? At some point, he was just completely lost in the New England secondary.
Yeah.
And then Reed and Jennings and again, say TDs all round. You see they're just raining TDs across the board on Jeff's side, and didn't really need to do it with the kicker and defense either. That would have been a nice adding score.
I felt like the Falcons were an odd choice, to be honest. Like I especially Falcons defense not good in an absolute plum matchup. I'd still be hesitant against using them, let alone at mile high against a
Yes,
pretty
exactly.
good Denver offense at the moment. Not the Denver offense we saw at the start of the year. They're definitely a completely different kettle of fish. So very, very perplexing choice for me.
Yes, absolutely, and say 11 points total. Didn't need to worry about it. Didn't need to carry it in the end, but yes, but you can't knock a 141 score. I think that we've seen that across that team, that isn't going to happen every week. But even if that regresses even just a little bit, then that's a good thing. And I think maybe there's better balance to be had now. Don't forget, Mike Evans coming back in will be only a bonus for this team.
Yes.
Whilst for Ross's team, it is Burrow or bust, as we well know. But unlike the TDs on the other side, where it absolutely rained, it did not rain TDs for Ross. So again, these things make a big difference. But there's no reason to suggest guys like Justin Jefferson and Chubb and obviously Etienne's got game scripted out, but you'd expect guys like that to maybe go for a TD. So yeah, unfortunately, didn't happen there. This team is absolutely what it is at this point. Unfortunately for Ross, he has 3 running backs that are on losing teams more often than not, especially Cleveland now, who hopefully will start using Chubb a bit more with now they've solidified their QB position. But Tyler Lockett's the one there, as good as he has been over the years for many a team in service to you in fantasy. He is now, unfortunately, not a factor in that offense.
No.
And though he deserves to be in our Ring of Honor, probably doesn't deserve to be in your fantasy team.
No, but when you look at the rest of Ross's team, like you say, especially on a bye week, I can see why, but Ross put him in. And just to clarify, yes, so 142 is the new season high by Jeff. So congrats to you, Jeff. Let's see if that holds for the rest of the season. This was the Florida Bowl as well, of course, as both these coaches support Florida-based teams. We'll go to the next game then, which is the other Winchester division, featuring the division leader Bare Necessities, who look poised to return to the playoffs. Obviously still a lot to play for. It's not signed, sealed and delivered, but looking very good, facing off against Oakland Golden Bears. Probably needed a win in this one to keep the division interesting, keep their playoff hopes realistically alive. Did not get it, and in fact we have another buzzsaw because Bare Necessities dropping 132 to Oakland Golden Bears' 79 points there. Taking a look at the and this is, I've coined this. We've got a Bears Bowl already, Chris, but I'm gonna, because this is Bare Necessities against the Golden Bears, I'm gonna call this the Bears Rivalry Bowl because we've got 2 different Bears, so the Bears Rivalry Bowl, we're coining this one. For Bare Necessities, 26 points for Josh Allen. Derrick Henry got 11. Joe Mixon, 33, doing it his best Saquon Barkley impression. In fact, he exceeded Saquon Barkley. David Montgomery with 22. Cameron Dicker with 12 in the Broncos. D was 17 en route to that. Vaunted 132. For Freddie and the Golden Bears, 28 from Justin Herbert. Nice stream there. Doubling up with Lad McConkey, who also got 12, and the Vikings did with 15. But yeah, not much else to speak of beyond that. I can't remember if Devontae Smith got injured during the game in this one, but wouldn't have obviously made the difference here. So Bare Necessities goes 7-4, still in the lead in the division, dropping the Golden Bears to 4-7. Chris.
Yes, absolutely, and sadly a very weak again skill position performance from the Golden Bears. 123 for Lad McConkey is useful, but unfortunately in the context of the game, not as useful as one might want. Good stream for Justin Herbert though. Whether or not that remains, then we shall see. But potentially Justin Herbert has turned the corner in the last 4 games.
According to Jim Harbaugh, he's the best quarterback of all time. I will hasten to add, though, I'm pretty sure Freddie dropped Jared Goff last week. Again, doesn't change the result, but at one point in time he did have Kirk Cousins where he streamed him, and he had very good. He was on his bye week this week, but Freddie's been a bit loosey-goosey, I think, with the old roster management here. Again, 28 points, still a good result, but for a team that, like you say, isn't getting the best out of its skill positions, he's not necessarily. It's something he might learn, obviously, with after being in the league for a year, but being a bit more careful with the old roster management.
Perhaps. I think it's probably, if that was the case, 14 points lost, but you can see the improvement that Herbert's got, and I get having streamed Jared Goff several times, you either get 42 points or you get 4.
Yes, it's very fist of famine, you're right. Yeah.
it's a very frustrating experience. So it's worth. I can understand the point here, but yes, unfortunately, across the board, not that good. And I'm going to go as far as saying that just by some quick mental maths, I'm going to go with his skill positions did not add up to Joe Mixon.
Oh, let's go. So we've got 15, 21, 27, 30. No, they did not. No. Yep.
Say no more. On the other side, that running back room is absolutely. I would say. Do you know what I'd say? That's the best running back three in the league.
Yeah.
By some distance at this point, because you know that David Montgomery is going to score a first quarter touchdown every week. You know that he's going to go for at least double digits. Mixon and Henry, even Henry in a very tough, sleddy game against Pittsburgh, where they really did put the barriers out. Still managed to grind his way to 10.5, and Joe Mixon looks every bit the real deal once again in Houston. So, and they are using him. So look, for me, that is formidable. Plus the fact that Allen every week is going to go for a very decent score. So that gives you a very, very high floor immediately. And the icing on the cake really here was the 29 points from the kicker and D. Everybody needs that to get across the line. I think you need a high kicker and D score, generally speaking, to get into the mid hundreds. There's no doubt here. And though there's not a great deal on the bench for Dave, I don't think that that makes an unbelievable deal of difference when you've got that framework. You can afford to go for some streamers every week in one position. He's obviously gone for Cedric Tillman this week. He could do that. We saw Njoku on the bench. If Kittle was fit, he'd probably be in there as well. I think that team is complete, very, very complete, and very tough to beat. And that's why that team is 7-4, has the best chance for many years to get to the playoffs.
Definitely, absolutely. And then we have the last game of the week where we go back to the Southampton division. Entering the week, I think, were they? No, they may not have been leaving the division, but Mate Kitchen's great again, had been leaving the division for a fair portion of the season, entered the game with a loss on the board, facing off against Gridiron Gang, who, we obviously didn't cover it, but really needed a win in the week before against Great Scott to have any hopes, really, of keeping the realistic, at least, playoff chances alive. Didn't get that one, but they did get this one, though, 101-64. We see it all time and time again each year. Some, teams firmly in the playoff race start to fade a bit at the most important time. Very much still in the hunt. Coach Gardner Bellows, but they fall to 6-5 with a loss against now 3-8 Gridiron Gang team. For my team, Drake May, first fantasy start for him, 22 points. Tyreek Hill got 12, J.K. Dobbins 18, DeAndre Swift, my trade acquisition, as part of the George Pickens trade, 14 points, and the Texans D, 21 points. Get me to that total for Mate Kitchen's great again. 19 points for Jalen Hurts on Thursday Night Football. Okay, but not brilliant. McCaffrey got 11. Again, we've not seen prime McCaffrey since coming back from the injury. And then Jake Bates, the only other player, getting more than 10 points with 12. Tough day for Mate Kitchen's great again. History of this matchup all time. Gridiron Gang are now 7-3, I believe. 8-3, against Coach Gardner Bellows. And a game that Ollie would have liked, but actually in reality obviously had no chance of winning, as it would happen.
No. This is something I'm not going to say an unbelievable amount. He missed Chuba Hubbard this week. This is a team that really missed Chuba Hubbard.
Yep. And Neighbours. Yeah, and
Neighbours. To a lesser degree, I would say, but yes.
Yeah.
But definitely, because you look at the output Chuba Hubbard's been putting in over the last few weeks. We had a back-to-back 20-point and 19-point, and then he's been consistently in double digits since week 3, except for a down week in week 8 versus Denver, but there's only 7 points. But even so, that's not still too bad. Mm-hmm. He has been possibly the best waiver. I think the late round pickup.
Late round pick. Yep.
But yeah, absolutely missed that output this week because look in there and there's lots of guys that are completely down and out on their season. McLaren.
He's suffering with the dip in Daniels' play.
Yes, absolutely that, and likewise with Drake London, who just
got the Satan treatment.
Yeah, quite right. Denver, not good. Colin Sutton's average of the day, as long as we well known on this podcast, because everybody's picked him up, expects great things, and then doesn't get them.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony Pollard, unfortunately, is a very, very effective running back on a poor team.
Brutal matchup as well. Vikings have been really good.
Yeah. But let's talk about Christian McCaffrey for a moment, because last year, yes, he was a fantasy cheat code. This year, played 2 games. Consistent output, 10 and a bit points each. When that happens, and I think this has happened to a lot of us, when you go for a first overall and they just don't perform, you have weeks like this where you fall away. Now, actually, Ollie's team's been pretty good over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But less because of Christian McCaffrey and more because of Chuba Hubbard, I would say.
Not a sentence we thought we would hear at the start of the season.
Not at all. And Jalen Hurts, more to the point, but 18 points is okay, but not outstanding. For you, on the other hand, you must be very pleased with your Drake May stream.
Exceedingly.
That was a bold call that came off nicely, and then also your trade with Mike for DeAndre Swift as well.
Yeah.
Came out well. One week's good for one of you. 1 week's good for the other. That seems to be working. Tyreek's back. J.K. Dobbins is seemingly back running again. Texans D good week against the Cowboys, which you'd expect. But overall, that's a bit more of a consistent performance for you, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last few weeks the team's been better. I had the blip against Great Scott, but even then I think I still got around 80 or so, if I remember correctly. I needed 1 touchdown from either Dobbins, who got stuffed on the goal line, or Stafford, who couldn't throw one in the entire game against the Dolphins. And I would have won that one, unfortunately. But no, it's been a pretty decent 3 weeks. I will hasten to add, I have been absolutely nailing the D position for the last 3 weeks. I think I've got in upwards of 15 points for probably 4 straight weeks now, and even then I think I've had some 20-point games like in this one. That papers over the cracks, but we know, my team hasn't hit a lot. You said it, the spot start of Drake May. Stroud obviously hasn't been great for me this season, and then there's been other issues. Debo's not been so good either. DJ Moore obviously hasn't been a pick that's massively panned out. Tyreek, speaking of McCaffrey, you're taking a first rounder that doesn't, hit the heights. Tyreek's very much been that between the Tua injury and obviously this wrist injury seemingly of his own, and the general Miami offense struggles. So numerous things, and obviously losing Nico Collins earlier in the season, so numerous things have held me back, but the team's getting a bit healthier. I've gotten away from CJ Stroud, getting the D picks right, and you get rewarded with the points, but obviously a bit too late to do anything. It's mathematically, as we know, with the points forward, wildcard, depending where you finish. Because obviously no one, let alone me, can certainly compete with you. But if you were to get a position by traditional means, and I was to have a very good close to the last 3 weeks, you never know. A better week here at least for myself. So it's that's it. And I believe I need 1 more win to get 100 regular season wins all time. So I've got 3 weeks to do it now, which is for a long time I probably wasn't going to get it this season. So.
Well, yeah, quite.
Yeah. So that's it for the recaps. We'll do the around the league quickly, and then we'll go into the league news. So let's take a look and see what the around the league's got for us this week. Bucking the trends, be their projected to score 7 weeks in a row. Nice job there, Mike. Ixan won this week without starting a top 15 scoring quarterback. Penn State Parsnips, as they were called last week, be their projected to score 4 weeks in a row. I don't think it resulted in a win, obviously, though, for Ross in this one. Fudge Flies, you've increased your score each of the past 3 weeks, so that's a good start there. Always what you want to see. Teams have won 75% of the time this season when starting the league's top scoring QB of the week, 6-2 overall. Again, makes sense. Matthew Stafford and Taysom Hill, free agents, combined to score more points than all of the starters on Make Kitchens Great again this week. Wow.
What?
I mean, Taysom Hill had that ridiculous 34-point day or whatever it was in the end, and I think Stafford, he obviously, he had the 4 touchdowns, wasn't it, against New England? He got about 35 or something himself, so they obviously combined for over 70 points between them.
The unlikeliest of partnerships.
Yeah, indeed. Thomas Tyrants wishes they started Bo Nix. Not they would have made a difference, but the 37 points he scored would have represented the second highest individual score of the week. And also, Thomas Tyrants have now fallen short of their projected score for 3 weeks in a row. That is not a stat you want to see as you are heading into the final chapters of the regular season. We will go to the league news now. Okay, injury-wise, just one that I've picked out here. It's actually been a fairly quiet week, or certainly last week was a quiet week in terms of injuries, but it feels like the injuries have lessened a tad. Harrison Butker obviously had knee surgery. He's been put on IR for Make Kitchens Great Again. That's just going to be, I think, more of a massive spiritual loss for him more than anything. Yeah.
Certainly for Butker, it's a spiritual loss. That's what he believes in.
So, not much to call out on there. Apologies, it appears my camera is frozen, but we'll just leave it as it is. That's it for the injuries, really. Transactions wise, obviously it happened between shows, not in the most recent week, but Gridiron Gang traded George Pickens to bucking the trend for DeAndre Swift. So as Chris mentioned, that's sort of been fairly okay results so far. I really wish I would have traded Debo though, because I would have had one more win if I'd have given him Debo instead of Swift. But hey ho, that's how it goes. Oli Golden Bellows, or Make Kitchens Great Again. Oakland Golden Bears. That's confusing because his acronym is also the initials of Oli. I'm gonna have to remind myself of that one. Oakland Golden Bears adds Javonte Williams for $30. Now this one is interesting for multifaceted reasons, I think, Chris, because Great Scott dropped Javonte Williams, which was a bit of an eyebrow-raising move. Before the Week 11 games kicked off. I believe he did it on the Sunday, so he was locked for the week until waivers this week. That was odd in itself. And then I know Javonte Williams hasn't necessarily been great, but it's rare you find a player who, he's a tricky one because we know he's part of a committee, but he has typically operated as the lead running back for Denver this year. Not too often you find entering Week 12 a lead running back on a team, let alone, this Broncos offense, which has been fairly good. Again, I hasten to add, albeit with the committee. He won him for $30. If I go on the waiver report, I think it was only me and Freddie that were in for him. And I bid $15, which is all the money I have left. I think it's a good ad for Freddie, a team that desperately needs some skill position players. But I'm just quite surprised that nobody else was in for him, and didn't go more hard for him.
Well, absolutely. You're right. You very, very rarely you see that sort of value this time of the year. But again, I think because there's some uncertainty in that backfield, and there shouldn't be, because he's clearly the most talented runner in that backfield. But there's just a bit of uncertainty sometimes. But you've got to go with the trends, and clearly. Denver's offense is trending up, very much so. So at the same time, if you've got money, why wouldn't you use it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, camera's back, happy days. And then we also have, let's get you back, there we go. Then we also have Ixan added Marquez Valdes-Scantling for Evan Ingram for $1. Now, I put this one up because MVS has obviously had a ridiculous couple of weeks. He's on bye this week, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. But, I mean, given what he's done, and I get it's slightly random, I'm more surprised Ben got him for $1. I don't know who else was in on him, but as a prospective ad for team, there are a lot of teams that have some spaces on the bench to take a punt on players like this. I think it's a pretty good ad for Ben, to be honest.
I think it's definitely a Ben type ad where you're in a position where for him, he's got space on his team that if he doesn't perform as he perhaps has done over the last couple of weeks, then it's a kind of a no-brainer ad for $1. He doesn't mean as though he has to play him, but at the same time, if it turns out that he is going to be Alec Pierce on steroids, then we're talking a different proposition. Again, high upside for very low cost.
Yeah, and then especially considering this next one, which he's back, gentlemen. Oakland Golden Bears adds Taysom Hill for Raheem Mostert for $11. Again, just going back to my point, as much as I love Taysom Hill, you know, that was his unicorn week of the season, the 34 points. He might have another week where he has a touchdown or two, but, you know, he's absolutely not doing what he did again. I would absolutely rather have MVS rest of season than Taysom Hill, I think, for potentially what MVS could be versus what we know Taysom Hill is.
Yes, I agree. And so I think Taysom Hill will has the potential to, as you mentioned, you know, score very little some weeks, but absolutely go off in others. And because he can do so much, but you just don't know when those weeks are going to be. And you always want consistency in this game. You don't want anything that might happen. You kind of want some sort of flaw. MVS doesn't represent that either, but I think in a pretty depleted receiving corps for New Orleans, I just think that's why he's the better play. But at the same time, I also think that that we've seen enough from Taysom Hill over the season that if actually, especially after some waiver budget, net $1 on him isn't so bad.
Yeah. Okay, then we'll go to the standing stats and milestones. No milestones for you this week, so we'll go through the standings and everything. Very tight as it was the last couple of weeks. I think nearly all teams are between a 5-6 and 7-4 record. The only two that are outside of that is myself at 3-8 and Freddie at 4-7. So yeah, basically 10 teams between 7-4. 5-6, and even then there's only 2 7-4 teams as well. So 8 of the 12 teams in the league are either 5-6 or 6-5. Very, very close, very close.
Love to see that.
Yeah. So looking at the Southampton division, Tom's Tyrant's currently leading that one up with a 6-5 record. As Mate Kitchen's great again, also have a 6-5 record, but Tom's edging him on about 30 points. You are one behind Chris at 5-6, but you have a vast points advantage over the two of them if you were to get on level pegging with them. I'm obviously leading up the bottom at 3-8. As I say, that LOC dropped game against Great Scott really did kill me. Again, I had the points disadvantage where mine are only at 9-4-5, but I'm leading up the bottom. Portsmouth Dream Team is still leading that despite loss at 7-4, but it has gotten closer because Pakistan now 6-5, bucking the trend that they fall to 6-5, so they're still in the hunt as well. And Ixan at 5-6 as well. So again, 3 games to go. All of those teams still alive. The Dream Team just have the edge on points in the division over Pakistan by 3 points. Bucking the trend and Ixana are behind the two, but it's not a great chasm. It is an amount that could be bridged over the last few weeks. And then the Winchester division, Ben Necessity's leading that one at 7-4. Great Scott just behind at 6-5. Freddie Kittle's at 5-6, and Oakland Golden Bears at 4-7. So that's the one division where it's a bit more staggered, but again, there's still a fairly tight spread. Points wise as well, amazingly, coinciding with the record, the points go exactly in the same direction. Ben Necessity's leading that with 1161. They have actually overtaken you, Chris. I did not realise that. And then you've got Great Scott 1020. So Ben Necessity's very much with the points advantage there, as we know at this point in the season. The points almost work as an extra win. And then Freddie Kittle's at 970 and Freddie Oakland Golden Bears at 922. If the playoffs started today, we would obviously have Tom's Tyrants, the Dream Team, and the Ben Necessities as the division winners. We would then have, I believe, let's go into the overall just to figure this out. We would then have, we want to sort, is it going to, no, it's not going to let me rank it. Excellent, let's look at it this way then. So we have, of the wildcard teams, there are 4 6-4 teams. Mate Kitchen's great again for, sorry, not you. Pakistan bucking the trend and Great Scott, of which Pakistan has the highest points out of those 4, so he would be the traditional wildcard, and then you would obviously be then the points forward wildcard, Chris, because with my dad winning leading his division. Sorry, at the moment. Obviously, you are both heads and shoulders above anybody else in the league. So both of you are looking pretty good for a playoff spot. Unless, of course, Benessestis doesn't win their division, then it gets a bit more interesting. But being at 7-4, one would think my dad's probably at least locked into the wildcard spot at this point, which would obviously leave the points forward for you, depending what happens with your team as well. But as I say, it's still very close. There's a lot of different ramifications for playoffs. If we look in terms of the points forward, I kind of did the update there as we go along. So it is pretty tight though. I mean, the lowest team's on 922, which is Freddie. The highest is 1161, which is obviously your team. But if you take the top two and the bottom two away, it ranges between 959 and 1053 basically. So, 3 weeks, 100 points. We've seen crazier things happen. It's a pretty tight spread there in the middle. So, and in terms of the points against, you are leading up that category still, Chris, at 1133. You have outscored your points against, but obviously that does explain the 6 losses. On the standing sheet for you, Tom's Tyrant's not far behind with 1112. Then there is a bit of a drop off. There's basically another 6 teams that have over 1,000 points conceded, which range from just over 1,000 to 1,067, and then even then the Dream Team are literally just a point off 1,000, so you can throw them in as well. 2 teams at the bottom here, Benessestis and Pakistan, 923 and 884, have had a very good rub of the green. Both of those understandably within records, but to their credit, they've also been fairly good in scoring, especially my dad's team, as we know. But yeah, obviously a frustration for you, Chris, when you sit at 5 and 6 with a worse record than them, and they have literally 200 or more points less conceded than you. So it's just as we know how it unfortunately goes, but that's why we have that playoff spot. Breakdown wise, my dad is leading this again with the highest points, not surprising, 8 and 41. You are just behind though, Chris, on 78 and 43. Sorry. Then there was a little bit of a drop off with the Dream Team, 71 and 50, and then again from there it's really the top 3, because behind that there's again a gaggle of teams that are basically between 63 and 58, and then 56 and 65. That's 4 to 8. So that is 5 teams? 6 teams. Sorry, 6 teams. And then you obviously have the bottom rung, which is myself, Ixan, and Oaken God and Bears. One of those sticks out like a sore thumb there, because we know Ixan is very much in the playoff race still. With the 49-72 record, and with the likes of Gridiron Gang, myself 3 and 8, and Oaken Garden Bears at 4 and 7. So Ben may be getting a little bit lucky, as the breakdown would suggest, but as you sort of said, Chris is getting things together seemingly at the right time. So that's, I suppose, all that matters. If you look at the coach score, Ross at the top with 71, not surprising. We know that's a fairly thin team, certainly in terms of bench positions, let alone potentially starting lineup. Pakistan, though, doing a pretty good job of maximising the team with 72 points through 11 weeks on the bench as well. The Dream Team absolutely maximising, leading their division with just under 100 points left on the bench. As we know, Lamar Jackson's leading the way, but so the skill positions, not much being left around there necessarily. Then we have Benessestis again, obviously the high scoring team at the moment in 4th, 122 points. Not a massively low amount, but again, still some meat on the bone that they could have had above their good scoring. And then again, you have the mid-table again, you featuring here, Chris, about halfway down 1 through 5. So again, lots of points for you, and yet even more still left on the bench in the course of the season. But it's not a bad performance, I would say, averaging a bit over 10 a week on the bench. That's probably par for the course. And then we go to the bottom. We've got Mate Kitchen's great again. Potentially we'll be missing some of those points in the playoffs, because they are the worst out of the 3 contenders in the Southampton division, Tom's Tyrants and Forge Flyers. Ixan again, we talk about self-inflicted wounds. The breakdown doesn't look good for them. The points potentially have been there, 169 on the bench through 11 weeks in the race, but again, we talk about the slipping through the fingers and things that could have been different and made a difference, maybe needed some of those points. Tom's Tyrants as well at about 147 left on the bench too. So that's what's going on there. I don't think there's anything else we need to go through for that. The trade deadline has now passed, so no more trades for this season. We will now go on to Debate Corner. So for Debate Corner, we need John. Where are you, John?
Order.
There he is.
Order.
Thank you, John. He's just been appointed subcommittee chair of the Doge department in the United States government. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with Major E, Taylor Green, Elon Musk, and whatever that other guy's name is. So, but
that's it. The general band of nutters that are out there.
yeah,
Don't take my visa away.
So for debate corner this week, would have been the debate corner we had last time around because of how tight it was then. Still works now, which is happy days. I can't remember what we did, but we weren't off on a tangent with something else last pod. But it's good we could still use the one I had. So of the currently non-seeded teams, who do you think will make playoffs? So it is remarkably tight as we see. So like I said, just to remind you, the current seeded teams are Bare Necessities, the Dream Team, Tom's Tyrants, Pakistan, and yourself, Chris. So I'm going to obviously throw out Gridiron Gang and Oakland Golden Bears from this because the route to the playoffs of those two teams is very minimal. So of the non-seeded teams then, we have Fruity Kittles, Great Scott, Ixan bucking the trend, and Make Kitchens great again. So basically, out of those 5, I think that was, who is most likely, or who do you think will make playoffs?
Okay, so I do think that the Great Scott have a decent, very decent framework for their team, and clearly, with scoring 1,020 points over the course of the season, and in a division where they're only a game behind, that's not so bad either. However, and I would also say to Pat, that's probably where he should be as well. But especially with Viv's struggles with Lamar, shall we say? I shouldn't,
Well, I mean, he had a bad game against the Steelers. He always has a bad game against the Steelers. He's very reliant on him. You mean?
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
The caveat the word struggles with the fact that that's a one-man team. And should he do well, he's going to do very well. And should he do badly, he's going to do very badly.
Yeah.
So I think that division there is probably the one to target because I think all of those teams are much of a muchness. I spoke earlier on about Ixan. I think they've got a long way to go, but they do have, I think, probably the most settled roster of all of them at the moment, with a little bit of upside. They're clearly the bench. If we look now, they've got high upside on that because they've gone for Quentin Johnson, Alec Pierce, MVS, and Westbrook Akine, who are all big play kind of players. So we're rolling the dice there with Ixan. I think if I was to say now, I think that Great Scott would be there. They've got some bye week problems this week, but going forward, I think there's enough. I've seen enough from that team to know. But having said that, that division should be wiped out by Bare Necessities quite easily. And that's the only route I think they've got to be able to get there. So I'm going to discount Great Scott as much as I like their team, because I think that statistically that might not happen. I think Bare Necessities is one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league, because they've got such powerful players. So it's going to be someone from the Portsmouth division, Nathan. And
this could be a multiple team answer. It doesn't have to be.
So
if
I make the playoffs in the Southampton division, then it's probably Great Scott. If I don't and I keep going with the points for, then it's going to be someone from the Portsmouth division. And I think that Viv's team will get found out quite quickly. And therefore, Pat's team, who's sat at 1,049 points at the moment, albeit with a very low points against, will probably get found out as well. And I'm going to go, and this is no bias here, but I am going to go with a late resurgent run from Ixan to the Portsmouth division title.
That would be bold, because for that to happen, he is 2 games behind the Dream Team at the moment with an inferior point. So realistically, for Ben to flip the division, because again, wild card and points forward, not completely out of the question, but exceedingly unlikely for Ben at this point. But because of the Dream Team's nearly 100-point advantage, that's again not insurmountable, but unlikely. But that basically means the Dream Team cannot win another game
Yep.
And Ixan would have to win out for Ben to flip the division.
Let's go big or go home.
Wow. Fair. Well, that's why we've got the debate corner. It's a debate. Because I'm throwing out Ben and Ross straight away, unfortunately, because just looking at it, those two at 5 and 6, 2 games behind in the division. Okay, they're only 1 behind in the wild card, but there is, I think I did it, what did I say, 4, 6 and 5 teams that aren't leading their division at least. 5 if you count Tom's Tyrants, and both of those teams have the worst, compared to all of those 6 and 5 teams, have worse points than all of them. I don't know if enough of the 6 and 5 teams would stumble across the rest of the way to allow them to get a look in. So the only way really is the division, and because of the odds that they have in the division, I think you can just throw in the points. You just got to throw them out for me. I think looking at it, most likely, or who do I think could? I could see make Kitchens great again, flipping it, because where he's level, that is the easiest, quote unquote, division to win at the moment, because the win tally is at 6. As opposed to the other two where you've got a leader at 7. He is only 30 points behind Tom. You have the win less. Granted, your points advantage is like having another win because you only need to draw level. But, assuming the wins are equal, and he can probably even gain 30 points on Tom's Tyrant. So even if he has a level record with Tom, he could still make the playoffs that way. Looking elsewhere, I think bucking the trend, possibly. Again, what's working against him is the lower points forward for Mike, but where he's got the 6 wins, it's not as difficult for him to just pick up a couple of more, one or two more wins than some of the other teams in order to do it. And then Great Scott is a similar thing, because again, we need to realize that Pat Stan is the current holder of the wild card with a 1,049 6 and 5 record, but Great Scott, both bucking the trend, both have that same record at the moment, as to make Kitchens great again. So all of those teams could. I think where it is now, for me, it's hard to see certainly the Winchester division leader not being Ben Estes. I find it hard to believe the Dream Team won't get another win. I could see a scenario where the Dream Team doesn't make it though, and this is the interesting thing about it, because with Ben Estes winning the division, which I'm going to presume, if you were to win the division, Chris, that absolutely blows open the playoff spots, because you've got the 2 clear head and shoulders high scoring teams, then already locking up the playoff spots by traditional spots. That completely leaves the normal wildcard and the points forward wildcard open for practically the entire league. Like, okay, me and Freddie are obviously a bit further behind, but even then, because I think it's Viv, isn't it, the third highest scoring at 1,054 with 3 weeks to go, so much can happen in that span. You can just see one team have a really good few weeks, a few teams have a bad few weeks. So much it makes it very, very interesting. But if I'm to say who's most likely at the moment, I think it's Mike Kitchens great again would be most likely for me. Out of all of them, and then I could definitely see a scenario where Great Scott and bucking the trend somehow squeaking the playoffs. Yep. But realistically, I think those are the only non-seeded teams at the moment that do have a shot at doing it. So, good discussion. There we go. Right. Yeah, very good. So we'll go on to the previews for week 12 now. Close out the episode. So a bit of a longer one today, but hey, that's okay. So on the docket for week 12, so we're going out of the divisions. I believe we do have one more divisional week left, either next week or the last week. And then obviously there's another out of division week around there as well. So for this week we have Gridiron Gang against Ixan, bucking the trend against Tom's Tyrants, Oakland Golden Bears against Forge Flyers, Ben Estes against Make Kitchens Great again, which is the traditional Bear Bowl, Pakistan against Great Scott, which is another Florida Bowl, 2 Florida's point coaches, and then the Dream Team against Fruity Kittles, which is the Lockheath Junior School Bowl. So where do you want to go with the marquee matchup this week, Chris?
Well, I think because of the implications of the playoffs, if we go for it, then we should go for Pakistan versus Great Scott, I think.
Okay, let's do it then. So marquee matchup for week 12. Here we go. It's the marquee matchup for week 12. Pakistan against Great Scott. The current holder of the wildcard spot is Pakistan, but a win by Great Scott would theoretically, depending what happens elsewhere, but probably give it to Great Scott. Meanwhile, a win for Pakistan obviously lets them retain it, and obviously depending what happens in the division as well, could change some things there also. Looking at the projected scores, 79 to 68 in favour of Great Scott at the moment, with 12 points on the board for Pakistan. Let's look at the lineups. So the Great Scott, Conor Murray comes back in, as does Mike Evans from injury. Tyrone Tracy comes back from bye as well, so a few changes there. Dropping Jameson Williams, Brees Hall to the bench, and also Jared Goff is gone from Great Scott's roster, so he is going with the 10 personnel, one running back, four receivers. On the other side of the board, for Pakistan, hasn't made his change at the moment, as he has 2 players on a buy-in and 69 in the projected score. So on the bench, he has, let's see, Jalen Waddle, Jordan Addison, James Conner almost certainly will come back in. So he does have a few options to go, and he's obviously had Jalen Warren get 12 points already as well. History of this matchup all time. Let's see here. Where's Pakistan? Pakistan are 1-0. They've only faced each other once, but yeah, he is 1-0 against Great Scott. Chris, over to you. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
I think that the Pat obviously needs to double down on the Dolphins this week against New England. I think New England represent quite a good challenge for Miami at home this week. So I would fully expect to see James Conner and Jalen Waddle to come back in there. But Jordan Addison's been in reasonable form as well, especially with TD scoring in with 2 in the last 3, so not so bad. This here to me really is a must win for Pat. I think if he can get past this, then as you correctly say in the debate corner, then that I think that the possibilities are wide open to him. But I don't ever like seeing 3 players on the same team in the same game, because you just run the risk of, if that team is flat, you are flat as well. So it's a bit of a gamble for him. I think Chargers playing Baltimore is a bit of a problem. I think CD against Washington, again, you don't really know what you're going to get from that Dallas team at the moment, except that he's going to get fed quite a lot. Boston, the other side, Great Scott's team, for some reason is projected very lowly for a team with that amount of people in it.
I wonder if Mike Evans should have a projection. I'll hop on the app here and just see what's going on.
It's a strange projection, that one, but again, I think this is a very balanced team with those 4 receivers in there. With Kyler coming back in, has the potential again always to be very very destructive, and as the number 11 QB overall across the course of the season, with only 3 duff weeks this time round, isn't so bad. But yeah, Evans, Kupp, Jennings, and Reed, I think, represent a very very potent receiving core. Tracy coming back in, who's going to be well used, I would say, this week, with Daniel Jones being cut, Tommy DeVito starting, and really not a great deal going on with that offense, or maybe it might make it better. Who very well knows? And the Commanders playing Dallas, and they should absolutely flatten Cooper Rush. So I think for me, Great Scott continue their rich vein of form, point scoring form as well. The 12 points for Jalen Warren on the other side doesn't worry me too much. So I just don't think Pat's going to have enough to get it across the line. Great Scott for me, Nath.
Fair enough. Yeah. No. I mean, like you say, it's all going to hinge on Miami. They should roll through the Patriots. If you're assuming he's going to play Waddle, like you say, I'm not too thrilled with that. But Tua and H.N. should obviously have good days. But yeah, beyond that, like you say, I'm not thrilled about CD this week. With he's been getting by on volume with Cooper Rush, but Dan Quinn's going to be out to absolutely just smush the Cowboys, I think. And they're pretty banged up on the O-line. I think the Cowboys are too, which obviously is going to further exacerbate their issues. And like you say, Addison against the Bears, he could be okay. It's hard to know, isn't it? So, it's just hard to see the upside for Pakistan this week. I don't know if he'll go somewhere else other than the Chargers against Baltimore, quite possibly, but I don't think there's necessarily a lot of great options out there for defense at the moment. I completely agree. I think it shaped up quite nicely for Great Scott. I had a look through the projections. Nothing really seemed to, so it just seems generally all of the receivers seem to have fairly low projections, perhaps, which receivers obviously tend to do. I don't think Tyron Tracy necessarily had the biggest projection himself either. So, like you say, I think realistically, the output for him will almost certainly be higher than what the projection is. I think I agree with you. It's Great Scott probably will pick this one up here too. Injury-wise, Evans should return from his hamstring injury. Isaiah Pacheco not quite ready to be back this week, but could possibly be back from next week. We'll go on to our next game now then. The Dream Team take on Freddie Kittles in the Locks Heath Junior School Bowl. Obviously, the Dream Team in the lead in the division at the moment. Freddie Kittles, playoff hopes still alive, but probably closer to life support than obviously in a stable condition. However, he's projected to win this one, 88-83 with 27-5 on the board already. Looking at Ross's team, CJ Stroud comes into the starting lineup from the waiver wire for him, with Joe Burrow being on a bye. Trent McBride comes into the starting lineup from his bye, and I think those are all his changes. So that drops Travis Etienne to the bench there as well. So he is rocking the 21 personnel this week. 2 running backs, tight end, and 2 wide receivers. Those 18 points from Nick Chubb and 9 points from the Steelers too. On the other side of the board for the Dream Team, I think Tank Dell comes into the lineup in favour of Garrett Wilson. That I believe is the only key change, so he's going with 20 personnel, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and G. Harris got 5 points of Thursday Night Football in the history of this matchup of all time. The Dream Team are 7-5 all time against Ross's team. With a good start, is Ross on for the upset and to potentially cast the Dream Team's playoff odds into not doubt, but certainly into questionable status, I think it would be fair to say.
It's a very good start for Ross, let's put it that way. I think that 18 from Chubb and a handy 9 from the Steelers D on TNF worked really quite well. With Viv only scoring just over 5 points with Najee Harris, it definitely puts this game at a bit of a teetering point. I think Lamar's got a difficult matchup this week at the Chargers, who defensively have been very good, and historically, when you go, as we've talked about many a time on this pod, when you go from East Coast to West Coast to East Coast, vice versa, it's a very different story, and I think that the Chargers will be ready and waiting for him. While CJ Stroud has a home matchup against Tennessee, which is at this time of the season absolutely what you want. Absolutely. Now he hasn't hit the heights that he had last season, so we've seen that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, versus Colts, Jets, Lions, and Cowboys. Not over 15 points. Green Bay was also a 5-point stinker in Week 7 as well. Mm-hmm. But so there have been there's reason for optimism here. So 25 points near enough against the Patriots, 27.5 against the Jags, and 22.5 against the Colts Week 1. So if there's a poor defense and poor team, generally speaking, CJ Stroud does a little bit better, and I think that's the room for optimism here. But for roster skill positions, I just don't see it. I mean, outside Justin Jefferson, McBride, and Lockett, I'm not there on. I think Stevenson could very easily be game scripted out in a matchup versus Miami. Sanders had a very good kicking week over the last few, but again, I expect to see touchdowns on the board there. As for Viv, he has to hang his hat on AJ Brown and Robinson this week. Say yes, Dell's there, but Stroud's on the other side. We haven't seen the best of Hopkins, but maybe against Carolina we might, and certainly the Chiefs do have a good day there as well. So I think this is definitely a mixed one. It's been Burrow or bust for Ross most of the season. I think Stroud and Jefferson we'll have to anchor it, but I don't see where the rest of it's going to come from. On the other side, I think Viv is very much hanging on to Lamar. and that's about it. I think it's going to be a very tough one to call, but actually I think the points that are already on the board will prove quite a decisive factor here, but I don't think the impact will be seen across the board, and it'll be Viv by smidgens over Reese in this one.
Okay, yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely an interesting game to call. If we were doing this preview on Wednesday or even Thursday before the game kicked off, I think we would have both probably been squarely on the Dream Team side. But you're right, the points are the kicker, and the points are actually going to lead me to fall on the other side, albeit similarly closely to Fruity Kittles. You're right. I think it absolutely hinges on Justin Jefferson has to have a big day. I think Stevenson and Sanders could be serviceable, and then if he obviously gets anything from McBride and Lockett, that's gravy. But yeah, it is to hinge on Jefferson and CJ Stroud. I've obviously cut CJ Stroud now. I don't know. But this would typically be the week I cut him, Ross picks him up, and then he has a good day. Because like you say, he has had a couple of good games, but I think those were quite a while ago. That was when Stephon Diggs was healthy as well, and the O-line was a bit healthier. They have this annoying tendency now that they're like the Miami offense was last year with Tua, where they seemingly just run in all their touchdowns. Joe Mixon just seems to get all the touchdowns. But Nico Collins is back now, and I think Stroud has been better at home as well. I believe the Titans have placed the Jerry Sneed on IR this week as well, so that pass defense isn't quite at full strength. So, this could typically be the Ross randomness where CJ Stroud actually has a good game, and you absolutely hit it on the other side. For the Dream Team to erase the deficit, certainly it's got to come from Lamar Jackson and AJ Brown. Brian Robinson will probably have a serviceable day, and then he's relying on the supporting cast there to do something decent. Chiefs D on paper against Carolina could be a smash spot, but I don't know, because Carolina have seemingly been playing a bit better. They're actually on a win streak, believe it or not, Carolina. Granted, one of those came against the Giants. I can't remember who they played before that, but and it's for Lamar Jackson. Let's not forget, it's the Har Bowl. It's with them going to LA. The rematch of the Har Bowl, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, no, Ross for me in this one, but I agree, this is going to be an interesting game to watch. So we'll go on to our next game now. Gridiron Gang takes on Ixan here. Ixan obviously very much looking to keep the playoff hopes alive. Gridiron Gang pretty much just playing for fun at this point, which isn't typically something that happens against Ixan for them. Projections have this one going in favour of Ixan 85-79. Ixan has 8.5 points on the board already too, courtesy of Jerry Jeudy. Baker Mayfield comes back in the lineup from bye for them. I believe that's the only change. I can't remember who they played at. Russell Wilson, that was it, to the waiver wire for them. So he's going with 10 personnel, 1 running back, 4 receivers. On the other side of the board for Gridiron Gang, DJ Moore comes in the lineup for Diva Samuel at the moment. For me, that's the only skill position change as well. So I'm going with the 20 personnel. 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers. The history of this matchup all time, Ixan have a whopping 16-6 record against Gridiron Gang all time. This is going to be the classic weird game, I think, of the week, probably.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly up and down. Let me just have a look here, because I've just reset everything on the. I tell you what, the NFL.com app on bloody Firefox. If you want to advertise stuff, all very well and good, but if you want to remove all the stats afterwards, that's painful.
Yeah.
All the adverts. What a shit system. Anyway.
Yes.
There you go. Right, so there we go. We're back. We're going to use the medium of phones, because that's just the best way to do it, because you don't get shitloads of advertising. So let me see here. Drake May versus Miami. Right, okay. QBs. Right, Baker's going to do well in this one. I think that the Giants are going to be, though they might stabilise themselves, they're still going to be in a state of disarray, because let's be frank, their QB situation isn't great. The Bucks have been sneaky consistent for most of the year. Not even sneaky consistent. They've just been consistent all year. They've been a difficult team to beat, and this will be no different. I mentioned earlier on that I was quite hot on Ben's receiving core. I think Metcalf, Puka, and Calvin Ridley at this stage of the season is definitely a useful place to be. And while Barkley goes to the Rams, I think he is matchup proof at the moment. handy 8.5 from Jerry Jeudy. And the 49ers play turnover king, bloody Green Bay Packers, just because that seems to be the case every single week. And for me, who annoyingly is the Jordan Love owner, to see 1 or 2 picks a week is less than ideal. But 49ers D against there's a high-powered offense. It's difficult, and that's Green Bay. Anyway. On the other hand, you are rolling with Drake May, and I like it. You've got nothing to lose.
Yep.
So why not? But I think that the actual value here is absolutely in Hill and Collins this week. That could be laugh a minute against that in those 2 matchups. Dobbins and Swift have very difficult matchups, I would say, although both are at home, and I think they're both going to get fed, but difficult. Houston versus Tennessee as a defensive matchup is excellent, and DJ Moore may resort to being DJ Moore, though you are not playing Debo.
That's because Brock Purdy is not playing at the moment. So I was playing Debo when Purdy was in, but with Purdy not playing, I have a decision to make. So between DJ Moore, Debo, Thielen, Dowd, or Estime, I might even bench Swift, like you say, because the bad matchup as well. So I'm kind of tempted to just throw in Estime against the Raiders and just see what happens, to be honest, and Thielen against the Chiefs, because if he's playing and stuff, because why not? But DJ Moore was a bit better last week, obviously with firing Shane Waldron, and it's been a good matchup actually against the receivers that typically do well against the Vikings running backs, the ones that struggle. So maybe Moore stays in, Swift is the one that comes out for Estime or something like that.
Okay, and obviously the Brandon the Goat Aubrey is on the bench as well for you, which is
I stuck with him. It's a sad time. I stuck with him for a few weeks. I gave him the benefit of that because he is the GOAT, as we know. I think he's got 6 and 7 points the last couple of weeks. It's just with how bad this Cowboys offense is, it's just not happening, is it? So I think it's a logical point to pivot when I have the bench space available to do so as well. As I did have Tommy DeVito because I was thinking of really having some fun and playing him, but now I'm going to stick with the homer play and go with Trey.
Fair enough. In which case, my assessment of this is what's in front of me.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine.
I'm going to go with Ben's team. I'm hot on Ben's team for reasons I can't quite put my finger on, but I do think that those 3 receivers and Saquon, and most importantly, Baker Mayfield coming back in for the Bucs with weapons will help this team win.
Definitely, and I am locking Ben because Ben always beats me, as we've seen by the record. He's got on paper a very nicely shaped week. That Philly Eagles game is going to be an interesting one with Puka and Barkley both going in that one. That could absolutely be the death knell for me on Sunday Night Football. But like you say, even beyond that, Baker, DK. Could have a nice day as well. And 49ers, D and Green Bay. Don't love that one so much now, obviously, with Purdy not playing. Seabert is back, which is nice. But on the other side of the board, I mean, if Purdy was in and I had Debo there, and over, maybe it could be interesting. I just think, like you say, I've got some players who could pop off with Hill, Collins, if May has a decent day. I don't know. I could see a win, but Ben always beats me, so I won't, so it's fine. I could have a decent day though. We'll see. Right, we'll go on to our next game now. What jingle did I play last for the intros? That one. So we go on to this one. Bucking the Trend takes on Tom's Tyrants. Again, this is another playoff interest game. 2 6-5 teams. One is inside with the division lead at the moment. One is on the outside. Projections have us going Tom's Tyrants' way, 81-73. Bucking the Trend has 5 points on the board from George Pickens, but that will obviously be considered slightly disappointing. Elsewhere for Bucking the Trend, Jackson Smith and Jigba comes back into the lineup. Josh Jacobs comes in back from his bye as well. All change really for Bucking the Trend because Josh Palmer comes in, I think, as well. and Bucky Irvin back from bye also, which drops obviously all of Amari Cooper, Bijan Robinson, and Chase Brown to the bench, who are all on bye. There may even have been another change there as well. On Tom's he's going with the 20 personnel here next to receivers. On the other side of the board for Tom's Tyrants, I believe it is it is slightly changed. Rashad White comes into the lineup back from bye, which drops Khalil Shakir to the bench. He does have a kicker on bye though, so the projections will get a bit bigger once that is presumably addressed. So for now though, Tom is going with the 31 personnel, 3 running backs, a tight end and a receiver. The history of this matchup all time, bucking the trend, are 4-1 against Tom's Tyrants. So this is a very interesting playoff ramification game, Chris, because it could knock Tom's Tyrants effectively from division winner to non-seeded, and a win for bucking the trend could potentially bring him up to division leader. Very unlikely with the points on the Dream Team side, but it could certainly, again, potentially elsewhere. Well, actually, even with a win, probably with the Pat Stan versus Great Scott, it probably makes it a bit hard for Mike to even pip into the wildcard spot as well. But, depending what the point swing would look like. Not impossible. So, but yeah, an interesting game.
It is. This is my lock this week. And this is my lock for Tom. Because I think that, again, the strength and depth that he has there in what I think could be either key matchups for the real life teams, or indeed advantageous matchups for them too. I just think that there's going to be too much here. So Mike's week hinges entirely on the fact that Mahomes has to have a big week.
Which I don't think he will against Carolina, because this is what we've seen from the Chiefs all year long. They're not this team like they used to be, where they would just drop the points. Sorry, this is a point you're probably going to make, but where they just drop the points. They are a team that likes to just do what they need to do to beat a team and get out of Dodge without injuries and whatnot. Again, Carolina have been playing better. It's still not going to matter. The Chiefs are going to win this game. But yeah, they're probably not going to really have to do too much, and that means probably Mahomes isn't either.
No, exactly. And while that might be the case at the moment, you bring Geno in against Arizona, that might be a bit different, because that's going to be likely going to be a lot of offense, I would think. Yeah. So as it stands, I'm not hot on that. I think, again, JSN's had good games in the last few weeks, and that's not to change. Jacobs will find it more difficult against San Fran. I'm not a massive fan of Palmer against Baltimore at all, nor Irving against the Giants. Bucks D can have a good game, I think, but again, they won't need to do a lot to win that game. So yeah, it really hinges on, I would say, Mahomes or Smith. But I've got a course in front of me, so Mahomes at the moment, but even then, and one of Jacobs or JSN, and I'm not sure if you want to really hang your hat on either of them. Whilst on the other side, I think that Washington have a lot more to prove. Again, against Dallas, for as you mentioned earlier on, actually that was a very good point. Dan Quinn going back and wanting to kick the shit out of Dallas. I think that's a fair point. With a very talented QB who's in a bit of a rut, but this is a good way of getting out of that, especially in historically quite a feisty matchup. Yep. Kelsey can fall into the end zone. It hasn't been very good recently, I know, in terms of overall output. Though it seems to be a trend of one bad game, one good game, one bad game, one good game, one bad game. This could be the good game. So let's hope that's the case there. Amon-Ra, Jones, and Williams all have, I think, especially for the teams involved, either feisty, advantageous, or in the case of Minnesota and Chicago, it's a bit of a grudge match up there, is it not? So, and then Rashad White, who is the talent in the backfield there for Tampa, which is the reason why Bucky Irving doesn't matter. Plus a kicker, plus the Rams D against Philly, who have been a bit up and down recently. I think for me, this is an absolute no-brainer.
I think it's just you look to the bottom of the bucking the trend side, or you look to the quarterback and think it's probably not going to be a boom day, and then Josh Palmer and Bucky Irving, how much are you going to get from those guys? And then, like you say, you just look top to bottom for Tom's roster. Okay, Kelsey's probably the weakest starter there, you would say. So if Kelsey is your weakest starter, that's not a bad position to be in. Certainly when the guy across from him has only got 5 points. Wouldn't surprise me to see Tom potentially change the defense up as well. Could even bring Bo Nix in over Daniels as well, but I don't think he can go wrong with either of those guys, to be honest, really, this week. So it's a pretty clear route to victory for Thomas Tyrants for me as well. Could Mike win this? Sure, but I think, like you said, the odds are fairly comfortably on Tom's side. Mike is very much going hard on the Bucks as well. Irving, McLaughlin, and the Bucks D, all against the Giants. So if Tommy DeVito can make things interesting and the Giants can play a bit, then that might not pay off. But we'll see. So we'll go on to our next game now. Oakland Golden Bears looking to see if they can try and play spoilers against Forge Flyers here. Miraculously only 1-1 behind them, 4-7 to your 5-6, Chris. And I'm a bit surprised you didn't go for the old self-lock here again. But you are projected to lose, surprisingly, still 84 to 83. You have got 8 points on the board, courtesy of Chris Boswell, not quite the 24 or whatever ridiculous score it was he did last week. For your lineup though, Brock Bowers comes in as the Xavier Worthy, dropping Alvin Kamara and Jamar Chase to the bench. Bit of a bye week problem for a couple of your star players, but you are still fielding 21 personnel, 2 running and a tight end on the other side of the board for Oakland Golden Bears. Josh Downs comes in, Marvin Harrison comes back from a bye, Javonte Williams obviously comes in from the waiver to the starting lineup as well, which drops all of Darnell Mooney's on a bye. Devontae Smith has been ruled out with a hamstring, and Lad McConkey to the bench, so he is going with 30 personnel, 3 running 2 receivers. No history in this matchup, first time you two have played. Chris, I mean, projections-wise, it's somewhat surprising to see Freddie have the victory, but you add Javonte Williams, and suddenly that running back room with Taylor and Hunt doesn't look so bad. You get Marvin Harrison back from bye. Josh Downs is sort of the only weak spot in that lineup, I think, to be fair.
I agree. I think Herbert again might struggle a little bit more against Baltimore. Maybe it might be a offensive shootout. Who knows? I think that Freddie's is actually a really solid team this week, and really annoyingly as well. Because say every week I seem to play people who want to score well, and it frustrates the fuck out of me. But anyway, there you have it. That is the game. You're right. I think all of those matchups there leave you in quite good stead if you're Freddie. And so again, Javonte comes in against the Raiders, which is a decent one for Denver, who are rolling at the moment. This seems like a Kareem Hunt kind of game against Carolina. They're going to be able to get it into good positions and then just run it across the goal line. So I'm expecting big scores there. India difficult to gauge really, especially with a team like Detroit who are used to playing indoors anyway and have been on a roll. But on their day, they can do well. But I am convinced that Detroit will be able to hold that back in terms of offensive power anyway. But again, it could be a very very feisty game, that one, I think. Marvin Harris coming off a bye, as you mentioned, against Seattle, should do well. But for me, I think this is one where I'm going to have a few players suppressed because of matchup. I think Love, Flowers, and Bowers will all be suppressed because of matchup. I think Walker and Gibbs will have the usual output, and Xavier Worthy is a complete and utter dice roll. And obviously not a lot else on the bench to write about. I could play Jacoby Myers in terms of over Worthy as well, but playing Bowers and Myers in the same team, I'm not convinced about that. The only people who are convinced about that are the Las Vegas Raiders. So this week, you're right. I think that Freddie actually might win this game. But for me, all I'm trying to do is keep the points forward going. So I just want over 80 points. Simple as that.
Wow, you are much more pessimistic on your team than I am, because if you're picking Freddie, I'm picking you, because I think despite the trouble still, you got to look at what these teams have been, and I know Freddie's, to be fair, done a couple of good moves here with, you know, picking up Herbert, picking up Williams, to maybe make it look a bit better, but you know, one of these teams has scored over 200 points more than the other. I know the higher scoring of the two is not necessarily at full strength with a couple of, you know, the players they have been a large proponent of those points out, but
Some keep it. Yeah.
no, I know, I get it, but I'm not as pessimistic on love as you. I think, especially with Purdy out and the Niners team is banged up to high hell, I don't think Bosa's playing in this game. Travaris Ward's out too, I believe. So they are pretty banged up. I don't think the Packers are I think they're gonna hang it on the Niners. In fact, Zay Flowers, that could be a shootout game, as we know that Brett Bowers had a great day last week. No reason he can't do it again. Ken Walker should pop up here. Gibbs is obviously, you know, I think you've got a much stronger card on the docket than you potentially think you do. And on the other side, again, what is this team showing us? Week in, week out, it's not a team that's necessarily getting great points. Yes, this could be a better week with how it shapes up, but you know, we see teams that find ways to not get the points each week, and then we see teams that find ways to get the points each week. Freddie has been the former, not the latter, unfortunately. So I'm going with your team. But yes, I could see a route to victory for Freddie here, absolutely. There is a lot of stuff to like there, but also wouldn't be surprised you if some things didn't go in his favour. So, yeah. We'll go to our last game of the week then. And then, yeah, we need the intro music for that. Finishing off with the Bear Bowl in Week 12, featuring the 7-4 Bear Necessities against the 6-5 Make Kitchens Great Again. Again, another interesting one for the playoff matchup, potentially. Make Kitchens Great Again projected to win 92-87. Bear Necessities with 1 point on the board. They left Cedric Tillman in the lineup, which I'm going to go ahead and guess was a mistake by my dad. Roster-wise, George Kittle does come back in, or perhaps it's not because he has changed his team a little bit. And Jared Goff comes in favour of Josh Allen, who's on a bye, so he's going with the 31 personnel, 3 running-backs, tight end, and a receiver. On the other side of the board for Make Kitchens Great Again, Malik Neighbours comes back in the lineup from bye, as does Chuba Hubbard, dropping Cortland Sutton, and Drake London to the bench, who is on a bye. So they are going with the 30 personnel, 3 running-backs, 2 wide receivers. The history of this matchup all the time, Bear Necessities are 4-6 in the Bear Bowl. Yeah, this is another curious game. It seems to be a leveling week. There doesn't seem to be, you know, teams necessarily overwhelming, looking like they're going to win. Some key buys for some of the better teams, and then some of the worst teams maybe benefiting a bit from matchups and things. So, interesting one.
I agree. I can't look. So the first things first. I can't look past Bear Necessities at all. The fact that they've got, and yes, kept Cedric Tillman in for, I mean, reasons that I can't quite understand if you've got Christian Watson on the bench. But it is what it is. Those 3 runners are the things that I would be, first of all, completely utterly scared about. And I know that McCaffrey, Pollard, and Hubbard on the same side like this is like this light, but Henry, Mixon, and Montgomery are a formidable 3. You bring Goff into the equation, who again plays better indoors than he does outdoors. And Kittle in there as well as a potentially one of the offensive weapons that might benefit from a QB change, actually. All round, I just can't see any different. Defense and kicker are good. I think if you're Denver playing the Raiders right now, that's a place you want to be. Whilst there's too many question marks on the other side, yeah, Jalen Hurts has been good. And I'm just going to pull his stats up here for the 5th overall QB in fantasy, but we're talking 25 to 33 for the last 5 weeks, so that does provide a very stable floor. But I want McLaurin, I want Neighbours will surely cannot come out of the QB change in any good way. Pollard again, they're going to get scored on Tennessee at Houston. I just can't see where it's going to come from. And actually, Hubbard, though he's going to come off the bye again, playing KC, they won't have to do a lot to win. So it might be a lot of volume, but I don't think a lot of room potentially for him. So yeah, regardless of what's going to happen, Benicessi the top scoring team in the league for a reason, and I'm going to pick them.
Yeah, no, yeah.
There's two other questions on the side.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, Benicessi is for me as well. While they're not necessarily at full strength, kind of had the slower start with Tillman. Yeah, you just look at Ollie's team. It's not been one of the heavy hitters of the year. They've maybe somewhat benefited from the schedule a bit. Hertz is obviously good, should perform again in this one. But then you look at the rest of the skill positions, and you're absolutely right. This week, I don't really get too excited about a lot of it. Tommy DeVito's, making neighbours better than he has been, sure. I don't think McCaffrey's going to do too great, really, with how banged up the Niners are. And, if they get behind, he's, I think, still recovering, or, they need to be careful not to overload him too much because they've given him a lot of work in the last few weeks. And he's not been the McCaffrey we've seen so far. So, I don't know. Pollard against you, the tough run D, like you said. I just don't like the makeup necessarily for him this week. And the Bears against Minnesota, possibly. I don't know. Darnold does love a turnover, but is that going to be a high potential point outing? I'm not sure. Whereas you just need to look at the running back stable on the other side. That alone, those three could potentially outscore Ollie's entire team, depending what happens, let alone what happens elsewhere for my dad's team. So, I agree. Benicessi's win for this one as well. And that brings us to the end of the pre-Thanksgiving episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Bit of a longer one, hour and 40, so apologies for that. Thank you for joining us, obviously, once again, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sam. I'm thrilled to be here. And also, during the course of that podcast, I managed to get something. When you just have these menial tasks that you have just in the background.
Yes.
Well, I managed to get inadvertently one done just by clicking on three buttons, and I'm thrilled.
Excellent.
I'm thrilled. Anyway, something's come back from the dead from 1998. How about that? So there you go.
Wow, that's interesting.
I know.
Yeah. Well, that's what we like. Efficiency.
That's one way to end, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I won't add anything more to that other than, have a good rest of your weekend. Best of luck in your matchups, unless you're playing me, of course. And if you would like to come and watch the games of mine today, you are welcome to do so. Goodbye, everybody.